Hello, friend. Welcome to the program. I recently had the privilege of having Joe Scheidler, the godfather of pro-life activism, here in my studio. We did over 3 hours of bantering back and forth and talking, and we decided we would make it into a multi-part series for you to enjoy. This, I believe, is episode 6, so if you've missed any of the other episodes, you can see them online. Now, the horrific situation I'm talking about is child killing. I know of 5 blood relatives that I have that are dead. Those are the ones that I know of. 5 people who share some of the blood that flows through my veins. 5 innocent babies killed. One of my cousins, who would have been almost the exact same age as me, we didn't get to grow up together. He was murdered, buried in an unmarked grave. When Roe versus Wade was first overturned, almost no one in the country had killed their baby. But now, over 40 years into this Holocaust, most of us know someone, most of us have a blood relative, somebody who has participated in the death of their own child. That's how far-reaching this thing has gone. And therefore, all of us have the opportunity to speak the truth, to offer forgiveness, to the forgiveness of Jesus Christ, to the women who participated and the men who participated in the death of their baby, and hopefully turn this thing around. Hope you enjoy this episode. I think that's what vexes me, the sin of omission, and where I don't share, and I wish I did, frankly, but I don't share some of your optimism. Because I feel like, well, for example, you and I in the 80s and the 90s, when the arc of Operation Rescue was so high and it was in the news constantly, the sit-ins were there, we were on all these talk shows and being interviewed, and you and I were on some big TV show together. I don't know if it was Oprah or something. We were on some TV show.
Yeah, we were on Oprah together.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, can you imagine? I mean, that's my point, is that because of our actions, the arc of the story, and it was out there. But now, at that point we used to say there are 15 million dead babies, and we were mortified. Now we're at 53 million dead babies with no end in sight, and people seem to be more calloused. That the average American is more content to just live with it, and then not to mention how many of us have been touched by it. It used to be that only a handful of people had killed their baby. Now we're up to the point where almost half of all women of childbearing age, 65 and younger, no longer childbearing, but that almost half of them have killed at least one baby. So now it's touched our cousins, our aunts, our uncles who drove them there. And it's almost like this collective guilt and shame and callousness has made people less outraged and less willing to act, forcefully act.
There's less outrage, and that's bad, but there is more knowledge. There is more awareness of abortion. And I think that there's something inherent in abortion itself that ultimately will draw a person away. That you can live with abortion for so long, and then it becomes obviously one of the gravest evils that you can imagine, to destroy human beings, to destroy posterity, to change history, and so on. And that is present. It's not like it was in the old days where we were educating, bringing people into new knowledge.
Who didn't know anything.
Who didn't know anything.
Right.
They do know it now. And so while I'm still traumatized and angered and depressed by the many abortions there are, I do see more people aware of it as a very evil behavior in our country, and they are opposed to it. Maybe we have to keep stirring the pot, but there is a knowledge and an awareness that there didn't used to be. That's the thing that encourages me, that will work. That undercurrent will work, where we used to have to push it. It's already working.
That's good. Well, one of the things that has distressed me is the number of Catholic bishops and priests who just won't take a stand about dishonoring, really, sacrilege against the body and blood of Christ. I mean, communion, serving communion to people like Joe Biden, a Democrat. I don't care what party he is, if he's a Republican, I don't care. But he's Catholic. Mm-hmm. And then, his hands are dripping with blood. And then, the priest holds up the host and says, body of Christ. And, he's taking the body of Christ with hands that are covered with blood. It makes me crazy. It makes me crazy. How do you deal with that? I mean, really and truly.
That's one of the hardest things, Randy, really, because could you do it? Could I do it? Could I give communion? And yet they'll say, well, we have to assume that they are right thinking, or they've been to confession, or they've repented, but it's unlikely.
No, and it's the public scandal of it.
It's a public scandal. And that bothers me a great deal. And I wonder how they're going to justify that. Because, see, they have to answer for that. And that, I studied for the priesthood for 8 years. And I sometimes am grateful for one thing, that I don't have to make that decision. To have people coming to communion that I know are in the state of mortal sin, at least objectively, and I give them the body and blood of Christ that I know they're receiving sacrilegiously. And I am the mediator, the one that gives them. I would find that very hard. And yet, can you pick and choose who you give communion to as they come up?
Well, obviously that would get into troublesome waters very quickly, but in a case where you've got someone in open defiance of the laws of God, open embracing of the murder of innocent babies, then you got to say no. I mean, I'm sorry, no.
Yeah.
And
some do.
Yes.
Some do.
And some have. Bishop Bruskowitz, before he retired up in Nebraska, was he publicly excommunicated people that were involved with Planned Parenthood. He said, don't come to communion. And and no one can serve them communion until I publicly declare that they can receive communion again.
Right.
So.
But Bruskowitz was an exception.
Right.
Right.
Right. Quite an exception.
And I love the clergy. I love the bishops. They have a hard row to hoe. But that would be a terrible problem. I as a bishop, I would have to excommunicate those public sinners.
Right.
And tell my priests not to give them the sacrament of the Eucharist, unless they're absolutely certain they've been to confession.